Hi there, I'm Simon Johnson, and I want to talk to you about lunch. Let's face it, lunch breaks are so important to us right now, so we really should be making the most of them. For me, you can't beat a lovely walk with the dog, or maybe a bit of lunchtime gaming, or perhaps an hour on the bike. But recently, I've been really cooking up some lovely lunchtime recipes. Well, now I've got something new for my lunch break, and you're all invited. Join me, plus a special guest, for the late lunch, where we'll be discussing everything from amazing customer stories to delicious lunchtime recipes. So let's see who will be joining us this week. Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to The Late Lunch Live with me, Simon Johnson, where we take a unique view into the world of CX and customer support and customer service, all from the comforts of your own home, hopefully with a little bit of lunch. As we know, CX is a vast, complex, often nebulous territory, and navigating it can be very, very challenging. However, on The Late Lunch, we're here to try and simplify and demystify of what is a beautiful thing. As well as debate and insights, alongside a great special guest, we'll also run our usual CX trivia quiz, where we get experts to compete for the coveted Late Lunch Champions League, but I'm calling it the European Championships now, where we can see James Dodkins is still heading up the top of the tree. We had Jeff Ram last week coming in at 5 points. Massive expectations of our guest today, who I'll unveil shortly. And whilst on the subject of football, of course, good luck to England tomorrow. Football is still definitely coming home. I can confirm it. In the last 10 minutes of the show, we'll be taking questions from our audience. And thank you again, audience, for joining. We've had an amazing turnout, actually. Thousands and thousands of reviewing on LinkedIn and other social media platforms. So really, really great. YouTube is proving very, very popular as well. So in a world with abundant digital choices and resources, it's very, very easy, really, for end users to decide where they want to move to, how they want to move, how they want to view. However, what we do know is that the better experience they have, the more likely they're going to stay with you or talk about you, or more importantly, stay with you, basically. So what is the secret to delighting digital customers? Because that's what we're talking about today. Well, this week, I'm joined by exactly the right person in the CX world to talk about this and to break down the ingredients for this secret sauce of delighting digital customers. Most importantly, though, it's actually the first time in my career I've ever interviewed a Lean Six Sigma Master Black Belt, which is awesome. So, introductions, go for it. Ian Golding, please introduce yourself.
Hi, Simon. Thank you so much for having me here. I've got my banana all ready for lunch, just in case we need it. And thank you for revealing the secret of my Lean Six Sigma Master Black Belt thing. Many people roll their eyes at me with that. It is a real pleasure to be here to chat with you about a very important subject. I'm Ian Golding, Global Customer Experience Specialist. Been doing this for over 25 years now. Why I've not gone grey is beyond me, but working with organisations all around the world to essentially turn the theory into practical, demonstrable change.
Fantastic. And I will another secret out, actually. So Ian is a massive distance runner, or fun distance runner. Competed many half marathons and marathons. And if you do get a chance, please go and check out his website, because there's some great pictures of him dressed as the Pink Panther, clearly having just run a half marathon. So
this is the way this lunch is going to go. It's just revealing all of my humiliations in life. Yeah, that's fair enough.
There's tons more, but fair enough.
That wasn't the best decision I ever made, by the way. But anyway.
Oh, I think that's amazing. I mean, I've run the London Marathon twice, but honestly, it's an amazing thing to see that many people really sort of generating charity. I remember actually, I was, probably 5 miles into the London Marathon, and I was overtaken by a Savoy sausage running along, and I couldn't catch him. He was gone in the distance. And then I caught him on about mile 21. I remember just the relief of passing this sausage as I was running.
These are moments in your life you'll never forget. And actually, at about mile 23, running as the Pink Panther. I was about to overtake a guy, quite a young guy, and he turned around and saw me and said, "I'm not being overtaken by the Pink Panther." And he suddenly accelerated away. I didn't see him again.
Perfect motivation. Awesome. All right, so let's get stuck straight into this topic today, which is around the secret to delighting digital customers. Okay, so let's just sort of try and maybe dig a couple of levels deep and perhaps understand the behavioral traits. Who are these people? What is this new digital customer in your view?
So, ultimately, we cannot get away from it. We live in what I call a digitally enabled world. And we have been living that way for the last 10 years or so, 10, 15 years. I first came into business in the 90s when I left university, and there was no digital interaction. Now it has just become part of the way we live, whether we're conscious of it or not. And so, there is no doubt that as the generations change, their digital maturity changes as well. However, it doesn't really matter how old you are, where you live, what you do for a living. We are all interacting digitally every single day. And I think the importance of that is organizations need to understand that the customer today, whether they are a 16-year-old or a 61-year-old, are interacting with organizations in whatever way suits them best. And I think this is the critical thing here, is that unfortunately, one of the downsides of digital is that if it is done well, it can massively improve operational efficiency internally, as well as improving the effectiveness of the experience for the customer. But far too often, organizations have seen the former of what I just said, that ability to be more efficient, as being a way of saving money. And so far too many have just thrown digital experiences to save money. But what they're not doing is understanding that 16-year-old, that 61-year-old, and how they interact, not just transactionally from time to time, but in everything they do in their lives.
And how do companies really sort of get to the bottom of that? I mean, I think you've got 3 teenagers yourself, and I've got one just coming up to teenage years. These guys are operating at a very different level to how I operate with social media or any of these platforms.
They are immersed in their smartphone. I mean, their head doesn't rise from the smartphone. Even when they're eating, they're playing with it. And I think still to this day, I have been very concerned that organizations have designed historically what they do for the benefit of the business. What we're still not seeing are organizations thinking, well, what is the day in the life of the typical 16-year-old? And how can we design what we do so we fit into their life rather than expecting them to fit into ours? And I think for me, that is the biggest miss at the moment from many organizations, is that we still are expected to, even if there are apps and pieces of technology, we still are required to do what the company wants us to do far too often.
That actually really frustrates me, and I've said this before, but there's nothing more frustrating than when companies use the word deflection. By the way, a ticket deflection. I mean, what are we deflecting away here? It seems crazy that we'd use that word. But also, the use of AI is there to assist and to help and to aid. It shouldn't be there to just push somebody off into a knowledge base that doesn't make any sense. It has to be right for the customer.
It's the way the experiences evolve. And experiences evolve in general is all around us and always has been. And I'm originally from London, and I lived in London for the first 32 years of my life. And one of the things that always fascinated me with London is that whatever time of the day, you could always find what you wanted. Okay, even if it was 3 o'clock in the morning, there was always something open. There was always somewhere you could go. When I left London, it was a bit of a shock to the system, because come 10 o'clock, everything's closed and you can't get anything from anywhere. So all that's happened is that physical manifestation of the experience has translated online. And what many of us now expect is that it doesn't matter what time of the day it is, I need to do what I need to do. But unfortunately, far too many legacy organizations have failed to understand that. Or it's not that they fail to understand it, they fail to acknowledge the fact that there is a need to do it. And so, I spent 7 years in online retail. Still to this day, online retailers, whether they say it or not, blame Amazon for their demise. Amazon is not to blame. What Amazon did was give us what we wanted, and that was the ability to get what we want, when we want it, whenever we want it. And far too many traditional retailers didn't do that.
So why is it that we're sort of 18 months down the line of the pandemic, which clearly, and especially in the world of retail, has been a massive acceleration away from high street, these kind of in-store experiences, towards digital? But why is it that we still see such a big gap between, the top performing retail websites, I mean, you mentioned Amazon, and others that you would have expected to have caught up, just still can't offer that experience to people online?
I would say that the key word for me is reactive. I did an awards ceremony earlier this morning for a company in Germany, and I was talking to them about the fact that still now people call this an unprecedented situation. And I'd like to ban the word unprecedented, because it's too easy to say we didn't know it was going to happen. But at the end of the day, you never know that anything's going to happen. And I use the analogy of Y2K. So apologies to those who are too young to remember that. But the year 2000, the world was going to end at the year 2000. But the amount of work that organisations put in, just in case. Why did they only do that for Y2K? I've heard people talking about business continuity for years, but I don't think they really understood what that meant. If nothing else, we now need to realise that the future is always going to be uncertain, and you never know what's going to hit you. Now, in the UK, obviously, we've had Brexit and the pandemic one after the other, and it's exacerbated the situation. But we need to be prepared for that happening again next year, and the year after, and the year after that. And what we've got to do is reinvent. The word transformation, many poo-poo that word, but we don't have a choice. You have got to continually transform and evolve. Otherwise, you will cease to be relevant. And that's the reality of the world we live in today.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I always sort of think about, you're from London, or you used to live in London yourself. You walk into Selfridges and boom, you're hit with this experience, aren't you? You've got the smells of the perfume and the aftershave, and then you've got the in-store experiences. And like I said, some companies have managed to transition that pretty well, into online, but others have just really not stepped up to the mark. And I always say every company should have some sort of omni-channel system in place. They should be looking, through channels like Line and WhatsApp and Instagram, all these others, and they're just sort of catching up. So I'm keen to get your views on this, really. If they haven't made that transition, which is criminal. If they haven't made that transition already, how do they prepare? How do they go and make that step forward to the real world?
Well, maybe you would expect me to say this as a customer experience specialist, but for me, there is so much work still needed to firmly establish the customer journey as something that lives and breathes within the way an organization operates. Now, I know that there are others in the profession that don't believe in the customer journey, but the reality is every organization since the day it was created was delivering a customer journey, the journey representing everything that the customer interacts with every day. The problem is that whilst many know about a customer journey, what far too many have done is visualize the journey once. And they've created beautiful looking pictures that describe the journey, but they don't do anything with it. And I've been preaching for far longer than the pandemic that mapping the journey is not where it ends. It's managing the journey that's the key. And the problem is if you map the journey 3 years ago, The journey today is totally different to the journey that was mapped 3 years ago. And this is the problem. Most companies mapped journeys once. And so as things change in that journey, if you don't reflect the way it's changing and measure it in the way it's changing, you'll draw the wrong conclusion. And this is why, unfortunately, too many are not actively managing their journeys. And because they're not managing the journey, they're failing to understand the measurable effect of that change in the journey, where the new priorities are coming and where they need to focus their attention. So to me, when we talk about the adoption of digital technology, too many are starting with the technology and working upwards. In other words, what technology do we want? Let's force our processes into it, and customers will get whatever they get. What I preach about is that we've got to flip that around. We've got to start with the journey, understand how the things our people do every day, our processes align to it, and what technology do we need that can better enable our people to deliver the touch points in the journey.
Yeah, totally agree. So just one to take that a little bit further, we get somebody to a certain level because of the journey that we want to take them on. So we map out that journey, we apply the technology and everything else to get them onto that journey. How do we then innovate? I'd love to get your thoughts there.
Yeah, it's a very good question, because innovation is difficult. And when you ask a legacy organization, people within a legacy business, what does the future look like? Let's map the future state journey. What they find that very difficult. People find it really difficult when they're immersed in the day-to-day of a legacy organization to think how it could be done differently. And so I think there are a couple of things that I will guide in answer to your question. One is that we need to see technology providers like Freshworks, like others, not just as selling technology, but as guiding us as to how technology can be used to innovate the way we deliver the experience. I don't think organizations leverage the expertise that organizations like yours have enough. I think it's we need this, rather than help us to determine, what could we do differently? How could we do it better? But in addition, I also think that there are now very simple methodologies that exist to help people innovate, like design thinking. I'm a big advocate of design thinking, which is not complicated. It's not complicated. It's about, getting people in a room to really understand, why does your customer feel that way and what could we do differently? The biggest issue, though, Simon, to all of this, and the reason that this innovation doesn't happen, is because we're not giving people time to think. We are so, in general, it doesn't matter what industry we're talking about, so obsessed with delivering day-to-day tasks to hit the numbers that we are not giving our people the time to be innovative. Because to be innovative, you've got to stop and think for a second. How could we do this differently? If we want to be better at empathizing with our customers, we've got to stop, and think about it. But that, unfortunately, has gone. And one of the downsides of the pandemic is, whilst we don't have to travel to work anymore, we're almost even busier now than we were before. So focused on, you've got to get all of this stuff done, that by the end of the day, we're exhausted and there's no time to think. So I think the need for innovation increases, but this is where, again, those that have that capability, I think they need to be leveraged more.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And it also sort of takes me back to this example where I was working, I was looking for a new lead, actually, for our puppy. Bought a puppy, looking for a new lead, and like a harness. And
Yes.
So I went online, a very well-known, famous online pet store. Perfect, had the one that I wanted, didn't have my size. So anyway, there was a number. So I called the number for customer service, customer support, just to ask if it was available. Sorry, due to COVID, we don't have a live telephone number. Okay, fine. I mean, we're only talking about a couple of months ago here. Okay, so I'll take that. So I went back online, and there was a live chat function. I thought, great, I'll use the live chat. So not only was it a live chat, but it was also a live video feed into the store with a member of their customer service team walking around the store. And I thought, this is amazing. First time I've ever really seen it play out that way. Anyway,
Yes.
I had a conversation with the guy, and what's the first thing he says? You'll have to call the customer services number. Which I did, and I got exactly the same message again. So my point here, just to echo your thoughts here, if you're going to innovate, you've got to take time to think about it. You can't just put in a really innovative piece of technology like video chat and expect it to just work first time.
And it all connects back to the journey. If someone had walked through that journey, then they would have understood that. Well, that doesn't work. No. Actually, we've got to empower that person to just chat with you as a normal human, as we're doing now, because that's all you wanted. And the beauty of that being video is he could have walked up to the leads and he could have showed you. I mean, it could be an incredibly memorable experience, but because they didn't understand the journey, it's actually had the negative effect.
It's had the negative effect, yeah, exactly. Awesome. All right, so perhaps we can just discuss then what is the kind of one thing we need to get right to delight customers. So what do we need to get right to provide a delightful customer experience?
So genuinely, I say genuinely because some people might not necessarily agree with what I'm about to say, but I think it is absolutely imperative. It always has been, but even more so now than ever before, is we have got to get into the minds of all of our employees the importance of knowing what it feels like to be a customer. Okay. That chap that you connected with in the store, whether he'd been told to tell you to contact customer services or not, if he was truly empathizing with you, he'd have thought to himself, do you know what? That's ridiculous. Right, let me show you myself. That ability to empathize. But part of the problem is that not only are we not giving those people time to empathize, time to think, businesses aren't empathizing with them. And I think this is also, unfortunately, something that we've known about for many years, but the pandemic has almost highlighted it. The way we treat our people is the way our people will treat our customers. And I think, unfortunately, the mentality for many businesses, and I'm being slightly unfair because I don't know, I'm making an assumption, is that, it's okay. People are okay working from home, but actually what the reality is that our people are living at work. That's what they're actually doing.
Yeah.
That separation between work and home. And so, I think we need to understand what our people are going through so they can be better enabled to understand what our customers are going through and then do what's right for the customer and leave them remembering the experience for the right reason.
Yeah, completely agree. And have you got any good examples of those companies you think have really stepped up to the mark?
In my experience during this last 17, 18 months, the organizations that got it in my world right at the beginning were not the legacy businesses in the main. They were predominantly younger technology businesses who knew, do you know what? People have got a problem here. They can't do what they need to do. We've got the technology to enable them to do it. Just have it. Just use it for 3 months, and they did what was right, knowing that we'd love it so much that, do you know what? Actually, by the time you tell me I've got to pay for it, I will. But it isn't just technology companies, though. I think the industry that, in my opinion, adapted best of all was food. I think what we saw many restaurants and fast food outlets doing over the last 17 months, it was really very clever. They didn't have a choice. They had to adapt. Traditional restaurants that never done takeaway suddenly realized, you know what, we've got to change that and give our customers the ability to interact with us, even though we can't do it in the same way. So, restaurants that would never entertain doing takeaways, but selling you food that you can cook yourself. And, I think that there is a lot to be admired about the way the food industry has dealt with this. They didn't just moan and complain, they just got on with it. And I think they did a very good job as a result.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. Definitely second that, and I'm hoping that continues as well, because I love the fact you can just get, you can get food delivered for one. I mean, I think of like Coat and those sorts of
That's right. We did Coat at home for Christmas, actually.
Did you? Amazing, yeah.
But it was brilliant. I mean, it was so easy, and it made our lives easier. And that I think opened their eyes, and they adapted to it. But as I said earlier,
to their clients,
others like the biggest sadness I think over the last 12 months was the demise of Arcadia Group in the UK. One of the biggest retailers, because they didn't adapt. They were led by people who didn't think online was necessary. So ultimately we've got to learn lessons and not wait for the burning platform. But be prepared to put the fire out even before it's even happened.
Perfect. So without further ado, I
was dreading this bit.
Let's lead into about learning, shall we?
Now, historically, I'm terrible at quizzes, so I'm fully expecting to come at the bottom of this.
Well, Joe Corson currently is propping up the bottom with 4 points. So that's your marker for 10, basically.
Okay.
So each late lunch we run a quiz session based on trivia, mainly around CX. You'll have 90 seconds. We'll pump through as many questions as we possibly can, and we'll see where we get to the end of it.
Okay.
You'll make yourself onto the coveted European Championships. Okay, so I'm hoping somebody's got my timer, and they're going to let me know when the timer is ready. And we will kick off our first set of questions for Ian Golding, black belt, with... You ready?
Go.
How many businesses use Facebook Messenger and Instagram with their customer? Is it 200 million, 500 million, or 1 billion?
I hate these questions. Let's go 200 million.
In the middle, it's 500 million. 500 million businesses use Facebook Messenger. Wow. Number 2, Etsy is buying which UK-based social selling site for 1.6 billion?
Oh, UK-based. Oh God, this is. I told you I'd do badly at this, Simon. The only one I can think of is eBay, the eBay version of the UK eBay version, but it's not going to be that.
No, it's Depop.
No idea. Never heard of it. I'm too old for that.
Question number 3. Okay, this Swedish fintech has introduced an in-app shopping feature in the UK, enabling users to split the cost of purchases at online retailers, thus eliminating the need for a credit card. Name this company. They're a big customer of Freshworks.
So you can split the payment?
Yeah.
No, I don't know. Honestly, I don't know.
They're becoming huge, actually. Klarna. You know Klarna?
I have heard of them. You see, I learn something every day.
Question number 4.
Very good.
Which model maker and household children's toy builder has announced it will be donating all proceeds to LGBTQ charities from the sales of a special edition carriage?
Well, it has to be Hornby.
It has to be Hornby. Yes, we're up and running. When companies prioritize CX, they can reduce service costs by as much as 50%. True or false?
True.
Yeah, true. 2. Question number 6. More than 90% of your customers will stay with you if they have a positive experience. True or false?
90% seems a bit high for me. I would say false.
It's true.
Oh, okay.
True.
Depends on whose opinion.
Exactly. And what industry and everything else. A good CX aspiration delivers on company purpose and brand promise. True or false?
True.
True. What does NPS stand for?
Net Promoter System is the official. No, that's the official. Yeah, I'll debate this with you. Originally, It was Net Promoter Score, but Fred Reichheld himself now calls it Net Promoter System.
Okay. Then I guess we'll have to give you it.
I interviewed him last year. So
one more. Gen Z users now use TikTok more than Instagram. True or false?
True.
True. It is true. I make that 6 points.
That was horrible.
I think. Oh, hang on. I've had confirmation it was 4 points, but actually, I think your question around NPS should stand. So we'll go in the middle at 5 points.
That's very kind of you.
You're up at a
just above Joe. That's okay. I'm okay with that. I'm comfortable.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Awesome. Five it is. Perfect. All right. So Last couple of bits then. So I think we've discussed delighting digital customers, and I'll just be keen to understand how you see the world developing. Let's not go too far in the future, but maybe 6 months, 12 months. How do you see things developing, and just maybe a bit of advice for those organizations, be it retail or other, for them to catch up or lead the way?
I think inevitably we will continue to become more digitally enabled. I think of that, there is no doubt. We need continually evolving technology to make experiences more accessible. But the big but is that going forward, I think what, in my opinion, this pandemic has highlighted is that experiences are all about human interaction. You know, whether we like it or not, it is about human to human interaction. And so going forward, whilst I expect the technology to get even smarter, I think those who try and eliminate that human interaction actually will suffer the consequences. I think what we mustn't do is force people down a certain route. What we need to do is to understand exactly what it is that they want and give them a way of interacting that suits them. And if they're a type of customer that we don't want to serve, then we've got to be honest about that and not try and serve everyone. And I think that the greatest example for me, or a very good example of constant reinvention, who I think others should look at, whether they agree with their products or not, is McDonald's. You know, every 2 to 4 years, McDonald's reinvents its restaurant.
Yeah.
You know, and many people don't even notice because it's very clever. I mean, that they transform the restaurants without you even realizing. And, you know, when they did their latest iteration a couple of years ago and introduced their digital screens, McDonald's understood that whilst they wanted people to start using the screens, there were still customers who would use cash. There were still customers who wouldn't want to use the screen. So every McDonald's restaurant to this day still has at least one manual checkout for those customers who don't want to use it. They understood that. And I fully expect in their latest iteration, or whenever they do that, it will evolve further. And there'll probably be less of the physical screens in store because people don't want to touch those things now. So I would imagine that we will become even more reliant on our own phone. And you will walk into the McDonald's and you'll order on this, either before you walk in or as you walk in. And you won't have to do anything. You won't have to touch anything that's in there. So for me, I think that our ability to manage everything on our own device, in my opinion, is the way it's going to go. And if your organization isn't enabled for that, you need to start thinking about how you're going to do that. Yeah,
completely agree. We actually went out for lunch yesterday as a family and ordered the entire thing in from our phone. And actually went out for drinks with the team and ordered all drinks through the phone, just on the app. And just one more interesting point there. I think I would echo your thoughts on McDonald's, and it certainly feels to me like it's as popular, if not more popular, than it's ever been, actually. And I was in my conversation with Jeff Ram last week, he was talking about his frustrations with McDonald's. Not because of the food or the quality, but because of the fact that there's so many food delivery companies now. You go to a McDonald's and every aisle is taken up with a delivery driver or another taxi driver delivering food.
And Jeff's right, because that's the mistake they've made. Because that when they reinvented a couple of years ago, they didn't know that was going to be the case. So they're going to have to find a different way of dealing with that. But that's constant reinvention, isn't it? And that's really the point. Is we now know that is a way of life. That's not going to go away. It's going to continue. And McDonald's will almost inevitably rethink the journey to ensure that doesn't impact on us normal consumers who are trying to do what we need. And Jeff's right. If you're in London, you know, it could take you a long time to get a McDonald's burger
through that drive-through,
and that can't continue. So I'm sure McDonald's will deal with that.
Yeah. And then one final question. Can you just please give us 20 seconds to explain the chart behind you?
Oh, so I always forget that. When I first went into lockdown, I spent about 50% of my time sharing knowledge. And I thought, I can't exist without a flip chart. You know, it won't happen. So I decided to get a flip chart, and it's my way of conning people to thinking they're in the same room as me. This is something I often talk about when I'm talking about strategy. And in the 90s, I worked for GE, General Electric. And I'm old enough to have been there when Jack Welch was still CEO.
Wow.
And one of the things I was taught in almost my very first week at GE was this very simple principle of find, win, keep. And there are certain things in your life that are always ingrained on your brain, and this is one of them. And what Jack Welch was saying to all of his businesses is that far too often when we think about business, we obsess ourselves with the first two words in this. How do we find customers and how do we win their business? And we obsess with it to the point that all of our activity is very front loaded. You know, we got big sales teams and it's all about finding and winning. What Jack Welch was telling his businesses is that the problem is that we don't have an equal focus on how to keep them for as long as possible. And among other things, I deliver courses for the Chartered Institute of Marketing. You know, marketers, it's all about the funnel, the sales funnel. But the problem with a funnel is that stuff falls out of the bottom. Yeah. And, you know, when you think about a lot of what you do at Freshworks, it's one of the reasons why customer service teams for years have been seen as a cost center. You know, they're not as important as these guys, you know, but customer experience is about all of this. It's not just about finding the business. It is about this combination of find, win, keep. So I often use that as a sort of a way of getting people to think differently about customer experience strategy.
Yeah, 100%. And I would also just thinking about it, swap the keep for grow, possibly.
Ah, I like that. Yeah, very good.
That's become a big area for us, customer success, and how do we reduce churn, reduce download, but actually grow our base?
Oh, I like that.
How do we get multiple products in?
If I add grow to this, I'll put, you know, care of Simon Johnson.
It's copyrighted, okay?
Yeah, okay, fair enough.
Awesome. Listen, we could probably talk for more and more time, but we're definitely at the top of the hour here. So I'd just like to say a massive thank you, Ian. It's been a brilliant session, actually. I've learned a great deal myself. So thank you very much for giving me your lunchtime.
Thank you so much for asking me, and I will go and eat my banana now.
Good, go for it. And for everybody else, I'm on holiday in 2 weeks' time, so the next late lunch will be in August. So we'll send around details, and it's with another fantastic guest, basically, with Rebecca. Without further ado, thank you very much. Thank you to everybody for logging in. All the best. Take care.
Thanks, Simon.